Hey guys, so Dr. Beri here again, and I just wanted to kind of make a continuation of the video we just discussed, which is about the 5 elements and the doshas. And we kind of briefly mentioned about pathogenesis of disease, which I feel is important. And a lot of you, I know this in this course, are interested in obviously understanding the pathogenesis of disease within your own body, and then of course taking that understanding and seeing how you can bring it into your practice for your patients. But in Ayurveda, with the 5 elements that I discussed and the dosha type, and just imagine like everything, as we talked about, like everything in nature is made of these 5 elements. So including the food that we're eating, the lifestyle that we're living, the geographic location, depending on the environment that we're in, is going to vary, whether it's too much vata, which is cool, clammy, a lot of rain, or too much pitta, like very hot. You're living in Florida, you're living in Arizona, or too cold, like you're living in a place that's very kapha, like wintertime in New York City or wintertime in upstate New York. So I want you to start thinking in that regards as well, when you kind of put your own self into perspective, because how the pathogenesis of disease is understood in Ayurveda is that whenever there's an excess of a certain element, excess of fire, excess of water, excess of ether or space, those are the things that would cause the imbalance. So it's kind of like putting, I always like to use this analogy, and it makes the most sense to me, to understand how Ayurveda looks at the physiology. It's kind of like you're putting a bucket underneath a tap that's dripping like drip, drip, drip water, and at one point it's going to overflow. It's going to fill up, and it's going to start overflowing. And that overflowing of that element, if you imagine it's one element that's going in, the overflowing of that element is where the disease process starts to kick in. And it's usually expressed in where there is kind of like almost like an inherent weakness. So when you think about like when patients are prone to a certain type of, say, eczema or psoriasis. Oh, my family had a history of psoriasis, or my parents always had eczema or psoriasis. So that for phenotypically in those particular patients, that is what is their weak point, and that's where that element that's in excess is going to express itself. So if it's fire or pitta being imbalanced, it's going to represent as eczema, or it's going to represent as psoriasis quicker than it would in their joints as inflammatory joint disease. And the approach to understanding what you are going to be prone to more is very simple, because just the way there are the typical 3 body types in Ayurveda, which is the Vata, Pitta, and Kapha, but it obviously is not that simple, because not every Pitta is like every other Pitta. So, to understand that, you have to understand that they also take into perspective that, depending on who the parents were and what their doshas were, and depending on the season the child was born, the circumstances the child was born in, the year, the geographic location, the environment that the child was in. So all of that is going to play a role in like molding these elements and eventually creating the physical manifestation, which is the person, which is the material, the 3D representation. And when you think about managing what you've understood the pathogenesis, it's like, okay, it's an over excess of the particular element and eventually the particular type of dosha. So if it's pitta foods that you're eating, it's going to cause a pitta imbalance, or vata foods that you're taking in, it's going to cause the vata to be imbalanced. Typically I always like to say, when the vata is like air and space that we discussed. So and when we think about the aging body, this is how I understand it physiologically, is that, as especially with the skin, I deal a lot with the skin. So I always look at as how you know, as we're aging, we're starting to lose our stem cells. So typically in our epidermis, we start losing the stem cells, their functionality, their, ability to kind of continuously produce cells. And that's where we start creating space in the body. And we have the breakdown of, tissue from aging, from sun, from different things that happen in life. And that breakdown of tissue, like breakdown of collagen in the dermis, is also creating space. So vata is like the space that's, kind of analogous to the aging body. And pitta, very typical of, like we talked about the metabolic process. So you're typical, like, middle, like the midlife crisis, where you're excessive fire in every aspect of your life. And that's typically your pitta overdose time. Disease sets in, your heart disease, your lung disease, your GI disease, everything kind of like peaks during that time, because it's that pitta time in life. And kapha, if you're inherently kapha, if you're inherently like a person that's like very earthy and calm, and then you have activities that are also earthy and calm, or you tend to be in kapha environments, obviously it can drive the kapha overboard and cause conditions like depression, cause hypothyroid, obesity, and various those types of disorders. And what's important is that when you think about the management of the body, if you know your dosha and you know what is causing the imbalance of the dosha, and so the typical treatment or therapeutic approach in Ayurveda is like a mind, body, soul approach. And when you think about the mind, mindfulness is given a lot of importance in Ayurveda, and they really give the utmost importance, I want to say, to the gut or the body. And it's all about diet. It's all about what type of foods you're putting into the body. So typically a pitta overdose is going to avoid pitta type foods. A vata overdose is going to avoid vata type foods. And a kapha overdose will avoid kapha type foods. And it's, there's again, a blog that I'll put a link below. So it'll kind of give you an idea. So if you're a pitta, this is what you want to kind of go towards. Like, it's not like, you're changing your life completely, but it's like more of a yay or nay, kind of you going out to grocery shop, let's pick up these vegetables over these, So typically, like, patients will come in and say, oh, well, I am super healthy, and I juice every day, and I drink ginger tea every day, and I have turmeric milk every day. But guess what? If you're a pitta, ginger's not the best thing for you, and you want to avoid tomatoes. So sorry, you can't have the pasta sauce that you just made fresh at home. So those are, they're interesting things that are important to kind of put into perspective when you think about diet. And of course, like, we're putting a very big emphasis on plant-based diet, and Ayurveda does put a lot of emphasis on plant-based diet, especially therapeutically, because they give a lot of importance to prana, which is the energy that's given from nature. So it's the nature's energy, the closer the food is to the source of where it comes from, the more it would carry the right type of energy for your body and be healing for your body. So definitely plant-based nutrition is, definitely given a lot of weightage in Ayurveda. So when you think about the 5 elements, typically, like, your fire element, like physiologically within your body, I want to think of it in the mitochondria, because the mitochondria is where a lot of our physiologic processes happen. Energy is released, energy is made. So the ATP molecules and your OH negative ions. So there's just a lot of activity that's going on in your metabolic process, typically in the mitochondria. Your water is typically in the cytosol, so of the cell. So when you take the structure of the cell, where do you find these 5 elements? I like to say the mitochondria is the fire. The cytosol is like pretty much where you have the water element. And then, of course, you have the earth, which forms the structure of the cell wall. The space is in between the cell is the space. And the air is pretty much the movement of the molecules within the cell. So it's really a beautiful way of understanding where these 5 elements go into a cellular level. I always find that very interesting to kind of relate the Ayurvedic science to Western physiology as we understand the body. So I just wanted to kind of put this short kind of understanding of the 5 elements and where you can actually visualize it in the human body. So, other than that, I feel there's definitely a lot more to understand, but more of Swadhyaya, which is self-study. So I would highly encourage you guys to definitely check out the blogs that we have on Be Mind Body Skin, the lifestyle blogs. There's a slew of information online on the web, but definitely we have created a massive library of information on our blogs and Be Mind Body Skin, and we work with a really brilliant Ayurvedic doctor, Dr. Arya Krishna, who's a part of our team, and I would highly encourage you guys to read more about it. So again, it's recommendations you can offer to your patients, for your own personal life. And I hope the information is informative, and if you have any questions, please comment below, and I hope you like and subscribe the videos. Thanks. Bye-bye.